Okay, dear friends, thank you so much for joining us for the long healing prayer. It's going to be a 2-week session, so today is part 1. Khandan, if you could please open with a healing prayer. Thank you.
Just a minute, I got to do a hospital thing.
Okay, go ahead, Khandan, please.
Okay, sure, no problem. Thy name is my healing, O my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou verily art the all-bountiful, the all-knowing, the all-wise, Baha'u'llah.
As many of you can see right now, Mr. John Kolstoe is joining us from the hospital. And he's been actually in the hospital for a couple of weeks. So we are very grateful and we are very honored that he has actually taken the time from his hospital bed to join us. So John, if you would please.
Thank you so much. First of all, on the medical front, tomorrow I'm supposed to go home. And I'm not arguing with that a bit. Secondly, it's been fun working from the hospital. A lot better than watching TV, I'll tell you that. But it's been great. Getting into it, the creative word of Baha'u'llah touches the heart well before there's any understanding. Many people feel the power of the long healing prayer with scant thought to literal meanings. That's all right. There is a profound relationship with the divine for anyone who reads the prayer with sincerity, whether for meditation, inspiration, assurance, spiritual or intellectual insights, greater strength, sensitivity, commitment, or resolution to personal problems, either physical or other. This prayer has depths far, far, far away from the ken of men and angels. Before going on, I'd like to say a few words about an aspect of prayer that's not thought of too much. I find it helpful to think of prayer as asking to work with God in sort of a limited partnership. Baha'u'llah said, if it be our pleasure, we shall render the cause victorious through the power of a single word from our presence. However, since our loving providence surpasseth all things, we have ordained that complete victory should be achieved through speech and utterance. Think of that. Whatever my problem, God could fix it, but he wants complete victory to be achieved through speech and utterance. That means me. That implies a working relationship in which God uses me as well as other channels for any kind of a resolution. In other words, when I lay my greatest concerns and priorities before God, I'd better be prepared because I'm really asking God to allow me enter into a special relationship with him and opening the way for whatever is needed to help me deal with the situation. Please keep that thought in the back of your mind as we discuss this prayer. Also remember, just reading the words is like skimming the surface of God's spiritual ocean. Thinking about each word is an intense spiritual experience. The Canadian Knight of Baha'u'llah, the professorial Jameson Bond, was leading a deepening on the tablets of the Divine Plan when he took off his glasses, tapped the top of his document with them, and said, "Now this is your commander-in-chief speaking." In a stern and commanding voice, he proclaimed, "So by God, don't mumble." No one mumbled. At the end, one of the participants commented, "We've been reading that like so much water running over rocks." In the West, the prayer known as the long healing prayer has been used by many Baha'is in the face of personal difficulties. It's natural to think of it as bringing out the big artillery in a physical sense when someone is gravely ill, not for every minor headache. it is so natural to think of it for individuals rather than a global sense. That's the way I thought of it for years. I love questions. It wasn't until I was asked a question about one phrase that I started to search for other gems hidden in plain sight in this wondrous tablet. Following are some insights generated by my delving more deeply into that precious document. Netta, would you read this?
Sure. High among them was Baha'u'llah's comment from two ranks amongst men. Power hath been seized, kings and ecclesiastics. Power was seized from them, but not their functions. Mankind remains in need of them. The administrative order elegantly supplants kings. But what about the clergy? Their power and authority are gone, but the problems they were to address still plague humanity. The ideal attributes for a clergyman are artfully described in the 5 attributes of the opening line of the long healing prayer, and they are healer, sufficer, helper, forgiving, merciful. The application of those divine attributes is still needed, even on an expanded scale. It is no longer just a congregation. It is the world community. It is no longer left to a clergy with limited tools. It is up to you and me with the creative world. Concerns are not limited to physical maladies. There are many discomforts beyond obvious physical ailments.
There are mental, emotional, and spiritual disorders. Some are seen and obvious, but many remain unseen and undetected. It is not uncommon to be healed emotionally or spiritually and still have the physical disability that led to the greater insights. Many people have experienced insights because of a physical problem. One blind Baha'i confessed that he would never have had the insight to recognize Baha'u'llah if he hadn't lost his eyesight. People often say the physical problem that led to an emotional or spiritual awareness was the best thing that ever happened to them. A friend of mine who had a brain aneurysm said it was the turning point and the greatest thing in his life because it really changed his perception of what it means to be a human being. Add to things beyond the individual, there are loathsome afflictions affecting the family, community, the city, the nation, or the entire world. Devastating health, economic, social, environmental problems are wreaking havoc on all mankind. From the individual to the global community, human suffering cries out for healing. Netta, go ahead.
The names and attributes in this prayer are so expansive that they encompass whatever is troubling the people of the world, at whatever level, and it is up to the Baha'is to apply them. It is no wonder that it was included in the Guardian statement with those tablets that, quote, have been invested by Baha'u'llah with a special potency and significance, that through them they may enter into a much closer communion with God and identify themselves more fully with His laws and precepts, end of quote. Baha'u'llah said, "Soon will the present day order be rolled up and a new one spread out in its stead." Then, sweeping changes mankind is going through are the result of his teachings and spirit. The whole world is caught in the rolling up of the present day order. With these changes comes tribulations and distresses, loathsome afflictions and sorrows. While this prayer is most often used for personal physical maladies, it is highly appropriate to use it for the ills afflicting the whole of this changing world.
There are the seen and unseen diseases. The seen are those things which are obvious and of which we are aware. The unseen are just as real and more debilitating, but they have not reached the point of conscious awareness. As we pray for healing for the known ailments, God may using our prayer to work on more serious problems that are just yet beyond our knowledge. In other words, before embarking on this powerful prayer, stop for a moment to think about how widespread and broad the need for ministering to the needs of the ailing world is. And don't limit your prayer to immediate limited problem. Arabic-speaking Baha'is often call this prayer the sufficing and healing prayer. Concentrating on the broader aspect of the prayer enriches the spiritual experience rather than asking God to do something for me. The prayer has me asking to help to better commune with Him and to identify with His laws and precepts, fostering concerns for all the maladies of the world and work with Him in facing these issues. This is not to minimize the importance and power of the individual physical healing. Why else would there be so many healing prayers? There are so many stories of miraculous recoveries that attest to the importance of prayer as a healing agent. During the building of the Shrine of the Bab, architect Sutherland Maxwell took gravely ill. Speaking of his recovery, the Guardian said, quote, "My gratitude is deepened by the miraculous recovery of its gifted architect, Sutherland Maxwell, whose illness was pronounced hopeless by physicians," close quote. One woman wrote to the Guardian about her mother when physicians had found her condition to be far advanced and the situation hopeless. Writing on behalf of the Guardian, his secretary wrote, "Baha'u'llah has revealed special prayers for spiritual and material healing. It is therefore your bounden duty to use such prayer in behalf of your mother, and that push your trust in the all-trusting and all-healing power of God. It matters not if you are endowed with a high spirituality or not. The essential is that you pray with sincerity and full purity of heart, and with one desire of knowing and accepting the will of God," close quote. Oftentimes we have a series of maladies, we're only aware of one, and what's being healed is something we may not even be aware of. In addition to this obvious power, deep thought about the names and attributes in the long healing prayer opens doors to a greater level of awareness and a vast array of spiritually interwoven realizations. Some of these are even seem to contradict others. They portray some of the countless intertwined facets and dimensions of divine reality. There are, however, major problems that hinder access to spiritual realities. People living on planet Earth are tethered to a world defined by time, space, and the tangible. Plus, there are limits imposed by one's education, knowledge, perceptions, experience, and cultural values. And Baha'u'llah warns, "Ye have allowed your learning to shut you out as by a veil from Him who is the dayspring of this light." It is important to reach beyond human barriers to find various aspects of God that are being implored. The vast range in names and attributes of God focus on supplications for 3 specific requests, stated toward the very end of the last paragraph. It helps to read the prayer slowly, pausing briefly, meditatively after each phrase and thinking about the words. Baha'u'llah said that, quote, "His names and attributes are mirrors of His own self." Think of that. Each word reflects a bit of God. You may want to reread this commentary periodically to remind yourself to look more deeply into the tablet. In the first section, 4 specific attributes are repeated prominently: sufficing, healing, and 2 properties of abiding. These 4 are at the end of each of the 40 verses, calling on various aspects of the divine. It's interesting to note that the number 40 appears frequently in religious traditions and practices, not just Baha'i, not just Christian, not just Islamic, but a wide array. This creates a spiritual connection with an array of events from past ages. Sufficing or sufficer is mentioned 44 times and is reminiscent of Baha'u'llah's incarceration in the Seychelles, where he received the first intimations of his divine mission. The believers were in two ranks facing one another when Baha'u'llah taught them this chant that was repeated over and over. One rank would call out, "God is sufficient unto me. He verily is the all-sufficing." The other rank would respond, "In him let the trusting trust." So great was the enthusiasm of these imprisoned believers at this early revelation from Baha'u'llah, one of lesser beauty, that Nabil reported, the chorus of these gladsome voices would continue to peal out until the early hours of the morning. Their reverberation would fill the dungeon and, piercing its massive walls, would reach the ears of Nasruddin Shah, whose palace was not far distant from the place where they were imprisoned. "What means this sound?" he was reported to exclaim. "It is the anthem of the Babis are intoning in their prison," I replied. The Shah made no further remarks, nor did he attempt to restrain the enthusiasm of his prisoners, despite the horrors of their confinement continued to display. The repetitions help each of us connect with both the plight and enthusiasm of Baha'u'llah's fellow prisoners in that pestilential dank prison. Repeated as it is in this prayer, it emphasizes the pervasiveness and unique importance of the all-sufficiency of God, both for each individual and mankind collectively. Heal or healing is mentioned 45 times. This is also one of the three specific requests in the next to the last paragraph that appear to be the object of the supplications. Excuse me just a minute. Two things, turn on the overhead light and I find my telephone. I can't find my telephone.
What's off?
No, I want the overhead lights on
Oh,
too.
you do?
I need all the light I can get. I'm on Zoom. I need all the light I can get.
Which light were you talking about?
The overhead lights.
You want them on?
Yes.
Got it. Is that better?
Yes, and those also.
Those also. Let's see. Is me?
The switch is over by the wall.
There's a few.
Okay, Netta, would you read that? Sorry for the interruption.
No problem, no problem. We're so appreciative you're here. So the request for healing, as well as two other items, appears towards the very end of this long prayer. Protection, healing, guidance, but only for those seeking the path of guidance. And Mr. John Kolstoe will get into that more during session 2 next week.
Thank you, Netta. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Do you need anything else?
No, that'll be all.
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption. Abide or abiding gets the greatest mention, 84 times. These repetitions stress the ever-present gift from God, regardless of circumstances. Thou, the abiding, in the context of the rest of the tablet, can be thought of as a personal relationship. That is, God is with each one of us at all times, under all conditions, even when the individual is not aware of it, or even denies the existence of God. A prayer from the Bab expresses it as all abide by his bidding. That is, like it or not, everyone is subject to both the benefits and limits of creation ordained by God. Baha'u'llah reminds us of this indissoluble yet not too well understood factor when he said, quote, "Considering what God hath revealed, that we are closer to man than his life being." The poet has, in allusion to this verse, stated, "Though the revelation of my best beloved has so permeated my being that it is closer to me than my life aim, yet notwithstanding my certitude of this reality, I am so far removed from him." The final repeating phrase, "O thou abiding one," can be thought of in the collective sense, throughout the endless spread of the expanding universe. God is very busy. He has to attend to all of its needs. Frequently, the Baha'i writings, the phrase is found, creator of earth and heaven. The repeated phrase, O thou abiding one, emphasizes continuous care and oversight of the entire universe beyond the act of creation. This prayer invites us to be part of the care of the universe, of these universal as well as individual concerns. Netta?
It is well to bear in mind the two processes the guardian often referred to, the lesser plans, which we now carry out under the guidance of the Universal House of Justice, and the greater plan of God, which he said sometimes intersects with lesser plans. For Baha'is, there is the added assurance that God is watching over the divine plan, even when progress is not as we expect or would like. Baha'u'llah brought many teachings that his spirit is moving forward in the world at large, with little direct help from the Baha'is, reducing prejudice, greater rights for women, efforts toward world peace, harmonizing science and religion, environmental concerns, and so on. All of these are works in progress and examples of the abiding nature of God. There is no stopping monumental changes whose times have come. Eventually, those items will mesh with the lesser plans that Baha'is promote.
Reread that last paragraph, please.
There is no stopping monumental changes whose times have come. Eventually, those items will mesh with the lesser plans that Baha'is promote.
In addition to the profound capstone of each of these 40 verses, thou the sufficing, thou the healing, thou the abiding, O thou abiding one, the phrases can serve other functions. It's marvelous to recite these words silently over and over while walking. It's also good to recite them as a spiritual preparation before any prayer, meditation, or reflective session, as seen in the opening of this commentary. They can serve as a kind of a mantra leading to a spiritual frame of mind. The names and attributes, contemplating the phrases in these sections expands one understanding and relationship with the divine. The importance of thinking seriously about the names and attributes is explained by Baha'u'llah as follows, quote, upon the reality of man, however, he has focused the radiance of all of his names and attributes and made it a mirror of his own self. Alone of all created things, man has been singled out for so great a favor, so enduring a bounty. With the more than 130 names and attributes found in this prayer, 119 of them are nestled in the 40 verses. More than just words to be recited, these mirrors of God's reality give a glimpse to the nature of God. Meditating on the names and attributes of this section gives a full indication not only of God, but the spiritual landscape we live in, as mankind more fully reflects these divine names and attributes shown to us in these mirrors. The full scope remains far beyond our grasp. Never mind, thinking about these names and attributes aids us little by little, according to our evolving capacity. As we go about the business of building the foundation of the New World civilization, we do the best we can with what we have. With these names and attributes in mind, there is both added strength and courage to do our Herculean task. At the same time, there is universal personal benefit, both physical and spiritual. It is not possible to know the essence of Baha'u'llah, as he affirmed, to every discerning and illuminating heart is evident that God is a noble essence. There is a tablet in the handwriting of Baha'u'llah that indicated that Ahmad, for whom the famous tablet is named, was one of only a very few people to get even a glimpse of Baha'u'llah's inner reality. One Baha'i decided to memorize a long healing prayer during the daily dog walk. He found he had fallen in the habit of dwelling on and cursing the events condition of the world. He happens to be listening in today. He decided to memorize the prayer was better than use of his time. He told me that some people need their morning coffee to get ready for the day. Not being an avid coffee drinker, he found that a casual walk with his dog while silently reciting the long healing prayer was an effective way to brighten his outlook regardless of the current weather conditions or news of the day. For him, it produced a deep and profound attitude and condition of healing. He also made a 2-column chart with the 40 phrases and names and attributes from the prayers in one column and thoughts concerning each in the second. This is a powerful technique to get a deeper grasp of the implications of this incomparable prayer. The names and attributes are mirrors of the nature of God. The names reflect glimmers of his reality, while the attributes suggest specific relationships with individuals or mankind collectively. The opening statement gives 5 attributes: healer, sufficer, helper, all-forgiving, and all-merciful. The last 2 call to mind Baha'u'llah's wonderful gift in the Kitabi Igan, quoted in part of the questions of the Akdas. God hath forgiven what is past. This is followed by 2 powerful attention-getting triads. The first one calls on 3 superlative names of God: the exalted one, faithful one, and glorious one. This is followed by 3 supreme attributes: sovereign, uprager, judge, leaving no doubt of the unmasked rank and majesty of the one we are beseeching. The full range of these phrases is seen by considering items that appear to oppose one another. They are really extreme points of a continuum. The next to the last verse is a great example, stating 3 sets of seemingly contradictory attributes: manifest yet hidden, unseen yet renowned, onlooker sought by all. These suggest both the omnipresence and the omniscience of the Almighty. The Guardian explained the difficulty of accommodating seemingly contradictory attributes when he said, quote, "Nothing short of the spirit of a true Baha'i can hope to reconcile the principles of mercy and justice, of freedom and submission, of sanctity of the right of individual to self and of self-surrender, of vigilance, discretion, and prudence on the one hand, and fellowship, candor, and courage on the other," close quote. While there is no attempt here to look closely at each of the names and attributes, a few thoughts are expressed about some of them. You are encouraged to find hidden implications in others. They are limitless. Go find them. Netta?
Early in the tablet, the 7th verse, the phrase is found, "O beloved one, O cherished one, O enraptured one." This brings to mind a child who is enraptured by his parents who love and cherish him. The smiles, giggles, and wiggling of the child as the parents approach brings joy to their hearts. 1. First, enthusiasm and courage. Second, a face wreathed in smiles and a radiant countenance. Third, that they see all things with their own eyes and not through the eyes of others. Fourth, the ability to carry a task once begun through to its end. We, his children, can bring him joy as we demonstrate those qualities in our daily lives, just like the smiling, giggling child brings joy to its parents.
Handed the cause, Mr. Forotan quoted those as Baha'u'llah saying, quote, "There are 4 qualities that I love to see manifested in people." The phrase, "O thou my soul, O thou my beloved, O thou my faith," may well mean something more in the original language than English. These features seem to refer to the individual. Why are they included with the names and attributes of God? The prayer was translated by a committee commissioned by the House of Justice. It is not known what words the Guardian may have chosen. I have been told by Baha'is who are conversant with these languages that both Persian and Arabic, there are common elements among the words of that phrase spirit, vital, spirit of mind, self, life, courage, heart, and belief. The soul, according to Baha'u'llah, quote, is a sign of God, a heavenly gem, whose reality most learned men have failed to grasp, and whose mystery no mind, however acute, can hope to unravel. How then would it be possible to give a clear, simple, definitive understanding? One thing is certain, my soul, my beloved, and my faith are all linked to the divine. It is possible to consider these terms as the foundations of a person's spiritual life and bridges to greater realities belonging to and connected with God. This is a good example of how human understanding and experience can be a barrier and limit the recognition of spiritual realities. There is much more to this phrase than I'm capable of grasping. It is equally clear that it is worth probing for more of an expanding and increasing understanding. The next statement continues to defy limitations, including the seemingly mutually exclusive, incompatible attributes of frequented by all, known to all, and hidden from all. The mind cannot grasp it. How can the hidden, frequent, and known all be at the same time? It is necessary to look beyond the restrictions of physical existence. O Spirit, O Light, O Most Manifest One is a reminder of the limitations of corporal or material world. Spirit and light are not visible, yet they are linked with manifest. From a materialistic, tangible mindset, it is not easy to understand how that which is not visible can be manifest. True, there is an indication of the presence of the invisible by its effects, such as wind that can be felt and measured, but not seen. In one place, God called just, gracious, and generous. Generosity is not generally associated with justice. Being just is often considered a stern demand for an abstract right or wrong, implying punishment for wrongdoing. However, the second Arabic hidden word says, the best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. These passages require a new way to look at what it means to be both just and generous, and how graciousness can fit into the mix. The Guardian extended this principle to the administrative bodies when his secretary wrote on his behalf, quote, he indicated that a National Assembly should be like a loving parent, watching over and helping its children, not like a stern judge waiting for an opportunity to display its judicial powers. God being the rising one, gathering one, exalting one, brings to mind the many gatherings that are offered to believers, 19-day feasts, reflection meetings, conferences, schools, conventions, and so on. Exaltation from these comes in many forms. One of them is the official purpose of the gathering. Another powerful benefit things are bouncing around. Another powerful benefit from the value of being together. Three of the Persian hidden words speak to the importance of these gatherings. One of them, wouldst thou seek the grace of the Holy Spirit, enter into fellowship with the righteous. I go to summer schools and conferences to learn something, but of even greater importance is to recharge my spiritual batteries by being in the company of fellow believers. It is also a marvelous networking opportunity. One Baha'i thinks of these words when members of the National Spiritual Assemblies rise up to gather in Haifa every 5 years for their election to the Universal House of Justice. They have arisen to vote for that incomparable deliberative body for the redemption of mankind. But while there, they interact with one another on a profound basis, networking and sharing ideas for the spreading of the faith. On the global scale, there is a significant increase in the number of meetings with world leaders hold to work out international problems. While not always successful, the fact that they meet to discuss them are major steps in the right direction. The world is better off when its leaders gather to exchange ideas, even when unsuccessful, rather than soldiers gathering to kill each other. This revelation is ultra-modern, yet God is called the most ancient of ancient way, clearly indicating past and present as one continuous, interconnected whole. Only God is capable of having at the same time the apparently incompatible attributes of being concealed, triumphant, and bestowing. This also suggests an interesting way to view privacy. Following this verse is an stanza in which the attribute concealing one, a gift to mankind, allowing for concealment or privacy of our own private thoughts, partially mirroring God as the concealed one. Yet toward the end of the section on names and attributes, there is an important disclaimer. Attributes are stated as penetrating all things and being all-seeing. So while God has designed the world so that no one may know our personal private thoughts, they are open to him. While he is the concealing one, he places limits. As number 60 of the Persian word says, addressing us as, O friends, verily I say, whatsoever ye have concealed within your hearts is to us open and manifest as the day. But that it is hidden is of our grace and favor, and not of your undeserving. There is the phrase that says, O most trusted, O best lover, O Lord of the dawn. That was a prominent theme in the popular culture, with a lot of advertising money spending on cosmetics, jewelry, potions, exotic trips, and so on to attract and attain love. This glorifies romantic love far, far beyond its importance. Romantic love that is the subject of so much advertising and popular literature is just another one of the many forms of interpersonal relationships that Abdul refers to as limited loves. And the Lord of Hosts, Baha'u'llah, links love with trust and further suggests that combining the two creates a new entity. Netta?
After explaining the four kinds of real love, Abdu'l-Baha said, but the love which sometimes exists between friends is not true love, because it is subject to transmutation. This is merely fascination. As the breeze blows, the slender trees yield. If the wind is in the east, the tree leans to the west. And if the wind turns to the west, the tree leans to the east. This kind of love is originated by the accidental conditions of life. This is not love. It is merely acquaintanceship. It is subject to change. Today you will see two souls apparently in close friendship. Tomorrow all this may be changed. Yesterday they were ready to die for one another. Today they shun one another's society. This is not love. It is the yielding of the hearts of the accidents of life. When that which has caused this love to exist passes, the love passes also. This is not in reality love. How many divorce courts are filled with people who once pronounced undying and eternal love for one another? The boundless, and even if denied, love that comes from God is the greatest unconditional love, making him the greatest lover.
There are a number of attributes of God that imply actions to be taken. O upraiser suggests the reader is to get up and do something. O helping one, something important enough must be going on that help is needed. O ordaining one, being ordained is being given the power or authority to do certain things. O sustaining one, there must be something to be sustained. That is up to the individual. O bestowing one, something has been bestowed that whatever gifts they are carries the responsibility to do something of whatever is bestowed. O quickening one, to be quickened is to be enlivened. That implies doing something of value. O Lord of joy implies responsibility for finding joy in the changes and chances of life. O enkindler, O brightener, O bringer of delight. To make bright and glowing gives one the responsibility of finding delight even when it's hard to find. O living one, O life living giving, pardon me, O living giving one, the reader has been given life and must make the choice of what to do with it. Sought by all implies being among the seekers. Netta?
There are specific phrases that suggest a creative tension. O perfect one, O unfettered one, O bountiful one. Obviously, in God's bounty, He is interested in perfecting us, just as obviously there are no limits, or God is unfettered in the methods He might choose to perfect us. Ouch. O beneficent one, O withholding one, O creating one. Creation is a process. When something is withheld or seems to be missing, the creative process kicks in to find the missing element. It can be inferred from that that God is beneficent when He deliberately withholds something from us in order to stimulate the creative process. I actually would like to read that line again. I messed it up. It can be inferred from this that God is beneficent when He deliberately withholds some things from us in order to stimulate the creative process. O fashioner, O satisfier, O uprooter. Rarely has mankind's ordered life been uprooted globally on a scale as we see today with the coronavirus. It will be fascinating to see how we are being refashioned to God's satisfaction when this pandemic is over. We often had to have our lives or assumptions uprooted before they can be refashioned in a manner that satisfies God. O unfolder, O ravager, O most clement one, unfolding can be a benign opening up or it can be harsh. Ravage is generally used in a destructive sense. Since the beginning of time, mankind has been periodically ravaged by crisis. Sometimes the carnage is local, sometimes regional, and occasionally global. Hurricanes, starvation, floods, severe storms, drought, earthquakes, plagues, pandemics, and pestilence of various kinds have all taken a heavy toll and severely disrupted normal life. Ravager, standing next to, O most clement one, with an exclamation mark, suggests that the unfolding or disruptions are all part of a divine process for mankind's periodic redemption. Sometimes, ravaging or unfolding things is the best or most clement way to find hidden gems and new insights. Crises bring out the best and worst in human nature. In some primitive cultures, a catastrophe such as famine is interpreted to mean society is out of balance spiritually and needs to readjust. Abdu'l-Baha said, although outwardly cataclysms are hard to understand and to endure, yet there lies a great wisdom behind them, which appears later. Mankind has a spotty record of applying that great wisdom which catastrophes can unleash. After a short spurt of altruism, the pernicious hooks of materialism usually have mankind in its clutches again. Following World War I, Woodrow Wilson gave his State of the Union address. He outlined 14 points that became the basis for establishing the League of Nations. Abdu'l-Baha referred to this as signalizing the dawn of the most great peace. Later, when Abdu'l-Baha read the terms of the Versailles Treaty, he was said to have wept. He clearly saw in that document the seeds of World War II, which Winston Churchill called the unnecessary war. Whatever was learned from the ravages of World War I was not sufficient to translate into action capable of averting the Second World War, though the potential was there. The overarching need is to heed the word of God in this age. Baha'u'llah said of it, "Indeed, it is the sovereign remedy for every disease, could they but comprehend and perceive it. It is not a magic wand to make calamities such as pandemics cease to exist. Rather, his words create the degree of unity required and provide the seeds of insight to manage calamitous events." O unfastener, O counselor, O deliverer, it is often necessary for ideas or things to be unfastened or uncaged from established or existing ways of thinking or habits or cherished ideas before it is possible to be counseled and delivered into new levels of understandings. In this sense, number 32 of the Arabic hidden words said, "I have made death a messenger of joy to thee," can take on an added meaning. It can be thought of as being unfastened, unchained, freed, or dying from addictions, bad habits, faulty reasoning, or even sound reasoning based on questionable assumptions, or dying from old and negative ways of thinking or habits. As we are being unfastened from those fetters, we are counseled and delivered into a healthier way of being and better environment, physically and socially, internally and externally. And that is indeed a messenger of joy. These phrases suggest that both destructive and constructive forces are essential parts of both healing and the growth process. It is interesting that rather than being clustered, they are spaced throughout the prayer.
Conventional wisdom and research hold that close, intimate sharing with a dear, caring, and trusted friend is therapeutic, both in the sense of preventative medicine and in the healing process. This is affirmed and emphasized in the phrase, "O friend, O physician, O captivating one." The expression frequented by all suggests that whether we call God, the Creator God, Jehovah, Allah, Shabbaram, First Cause, Cosmic Mind, Ultimate Reality, or something else, or even if his existence is denied, everyone has a connection. Even those who deny God may believe in and respond to the powers of love and, and gravity. In so doing, they are frequenting God. This is not unknown something inside each. There is an unknown something inside each human being that they draw on, whether aware of it or not. These are inspirations. We know a little about the source of some inspirations, but certainly not all of them, not even close. All compelling, ever abiding, most knowing ones suggest that we all have biological drives, needs, thoughts, hopes and dreams, cravings and expressions. They cannot be denied. They will be expressed, often unconsciously, either productively or destructively. The challenge is to use these compelling urges constructively, and he is there as the ever-abiding and most knowing to help us make the right decisions. God is described as one who penetrateth all things. None of our innermost thoughts, for better or for worse, are hidden from God, and he loves us anyway. Ian Semple, former member of the Universal House of Justice, recalled his pilgrimage. This is a message I got from him. Quote, "I had the feeling that Shoghi Effendi saw exactly what one was like, with all the flaws and shortcomings, and this would have been an acutely uncomfortable experience if I had not also had the impression that, in a sense, he was not interested in the shortcomings. What seemed to seize his attention was whatever capabilities he discerned that might be of use for the benefit of the cause. In other words, his encouragement was given not in ignorance of my faults, but in full knowledge of them without mentioning them. There's a strong indication that the Universal House of Justice also looks at capabilities and potentials rather than being put off by obvious personal flaws. Netta?
In reflecting on the phrase, O thou kind to all, O thou compassionate with all, O most benevolent, has many implications. Cynics ask, how can there be a loving God when there is so much human suffering? Wrong question. Throughout the ages, the kind, compassionate, and benevolent God has showered a heedless mankind with all the teachings needed to avert human suffering. It's up to people to apply the remedies. So far, mankind has not done a very good job of applying the divine remedies so generously provided. In this prayer, Baha'u'llah is letting his followers know how each of us who call ourselves believers should act towards others. Forgiveness is mentioned twice in the prayer, in the very first line and the end of the next to the last paragraph, as if forgiveness embraces the entirety of the spiritual names and attributes. In the Lord's Prayer, it is stated, and forgive us our debts or trespasses as we forgive our debtors. Taken literally, we are asking God, let us set the standard and to forgive us only to the degree and manner that we are willing to forgive others. There is a tradition attributed to Plains Indians that says that failure to forgive or holding a grudge is like being shot 1,000 times with a single arrow. Instead of me setting the standard, this long healing prayer sets a high benchmark to aspire to and apply in our daily lives, making us custodians of that portion of all existence to which we have access. This becomes a profound means of healing, both for ourselves and others.
Go ahead.
One of the most intriguing thoughts is the final one. O thou who slayest the lovers, O God of grace to the wicked. Many people reading this will find it rather strange, if not backwards. Shouldn't God be slaying the wicked as punishment for their misdeeds and giving grace to the lovers? It is interesting that lovers is capitalized, which could include the manifestations, all of whom suffered greatly to deliver the divine message. This calls to mind the Islamic tradition quoted in the Dawnbreakers as being descriptive of Quddus. Quote, whoso seeketh me shall find me. Whoso findeth me shall be drawn towards me. Whoso draweth nigh unto me shall love me. Whoso loveth me, him shall I also love. He who is beloved of me, him shall I slay. He who is slain by me, I myself shall be his ransom. End of quote. What station could be higher, even though the method seems counterintuitive? It is related to the idea that tests and difficulties are necessary as a means for spiritual growth and development. It also brings to mind Higley's dialectic, or the Chinese yin and yang dichotomies. Among the many ways of considering grace to the wicked is the promise that no matter how badly anyone might mess up, the grace of God still makes it possible for the individual to repent and improve. This was illustrated by his magnanimous assurance to a perfidious brother, Mirza Yahya, who had afflicted him with such anguish that an ever-forgiving, all-bounteous God would forgive him his iniquities were he only to repent. That is a great comfort to those of us guilty of lesser sins. At the same time, many wicked people seem to be graced with the ability to get away with anything. They may even be called charmed, or Teflon coated in the manner in which they do things and not get caught or otherwise punished.
A basic truth that is hard for Westerners to understand and accept. He doeth whatsoever he willeth, and ordaineth whatsoever he pleaseth. And the cult of the self stands in direct contrast to that. And it's very, very difficult for people who think that I have the right to do whatever I want, should be restrained by the fact that God doeth whatsoever he willeth, and it's up to me to accommodate that. This does not fit easily with the Western mind. It's strange to thinking, even of thinking people, but that does not diminish its reality. Beyond that, this context is healing. Therefore, it is helpful to look at it through the lenses of both different kinds of ailments and various methods of healing. The purpose of healing is to enable us to better know and worship God. It is not focused on physical renewal, reward, or punishment, even though those are legitimate ways of dealing with various behaviors. Many a hardened criminal has changed his way through kindness and grace. There are many kinds of healing, and different people react differently to different treatments. Many people wear copper bracelets to alleviate arthritic pain. A rheumatologist was asked about this. He just laughed and said, it helps a third of the people, and we have no idea why. Actually, about a half of that could just be the placebo effect, but it still leaves part of it unaccounted for. Tree nuts that were delicious for some, may be fatal to others. So what benefits or heals one person may or not benefit another. These are a few ideas I've had about the inexhaustible possibilities of these gems. Your insights and life experiences can lead you to many more. Wherever these thoughts may lead, pondering these names and attributes is an exquisite spiritual experience, unveiling greater depths of awareness and understanding, while the believers enter a much closer communion with God and identify more fully with His laws and precepts. Now might be a good time to pause until next week. And Annetta, you want to let them know their homework?
Absolutely. So here is your homework. 1, read the prayer slowly, carefully, and repeatedly, and try to read it daily if possible. Select some phrases either with a pencil or with a highlighter, and if you don't want to write that in your book, just maybe separately on a separate sheet of paper, and let us know what special meaning it has for you. And of course, you can share it with us or you don't have to, but try to be prepared to share it with others next week. And next week will be our final study for the long healing prayer. For those of you who are interested, we are going to relaunch again February 6th, and it will be at 12 o'clock Pacific time so that our friends overseas can also participate.
But now we have time for comments and questions.
So you all have the ability to unmute yourselves now, so please feel free. Thank you, John. And we're happy that you're going to be leaving tomorrow, so that's first and foremost.
Yes, thank you so much. It was like, it felt like I was getting a main line to spiritual energy and, I mean, power. I just can't thank you enough. It's something I look forward to. This is Donna Denizet from Washington, D.C. So, John, congratulations on leaving the hospital tomorrow. We've been saying prayers for you, and this has been one of the most important, I guess I'll call it a class, but I mean, really deepenings that I've ever had. So thank you from my heart.
You're most welcome.
And we also have Paul Mantle. Paul, please go ahead. Please unmute yourself, Paul.
How about that?
No, Paul, I'm waiting for Paul to unmute himself. He has a question for you. Okay, so anyone else? Maybe we'll just get back to Paul. He might be having some technical difficulties, as is common, so no worries. Let's see. Please, Lori. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. And it, you know, it's when you read the long healing prayer, you get something out of it anyway, but with the additional information or insight that you've given us, that helps even more. And I was also wondering, and might be a big ask, you said that Philip Dunn did that list. Hello, Philip. Is there a chance he might be willing to share that?
All right, we'll ask him. We'll ask him.
Yes, thank you.
Let's give him some time so we don't put him on the spot. And I
Exactly.
believe Paul is ready. Please, Paul, unmute yourself.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm unmuted finally.
Yeah.
Gee, I hardly know what you've left for next week, John. It's just been quite a thorough. I was just rereading your booklet this afternoon, and I did want to. You had that quote about the four things that Baha'u'llah loves to see in all the believers, and that's in this book. I thought I'd just hold that up because it is a wonderful collection of stories by the hand of the cause, Ali Akbar Furtan.
Thank you, Paul.
I was, one thing I was really struck, maybe I'm getting ahead of next week's material, but in the next to the last paragraph of the long healing prayer, it says this part here. It says, whereby thou didst invite all created things unto the table of thy bounties and bestowals, and by thy grace whereby thou didst respond in thine own self with thy word yea on behalf of all in heaven and on earth, at the hour when thy sovereignty and thy grandeur stood revealed at the dawn time. And so, you know, I'm just reading a little part of a sentence, but that seems like, you know, I'm sure it is a very direct reference to the day of Elast, or covenant of Elast, that Todd Lawson was sharing with us. When was that? Just very recently. When was that, Netta?
It was December 3rd.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because in the Quran, you know, it's actually chapter 7, verse 172. For those who might have a Quran, it talks about a day, a primordial day before all the souls of day of pre-existence. And Baha'u'llah talks about it in, he says, "Oh, my friends, have you forgotten that true and radiant morn, when in those hallowed and blessed surroundings, you were all gathered in my presence beneath the shade of the tree of life, which is planted in the all-glorious paradise. Awestruck, ye listened as I gave utterance." And you know that hidden word. So he said he did it on behalf of, so that seems to be a very clear reference there in the long healing prayer to that. It's just a wonderful connection to the Quran and the hidden words.
Philip, I mean, Paul, I know you mentioned the Quran notes, but which hidden words, just in case if somebody is taking notes, they'd like to know, which hidden words are you referring to?
Persian number 19.
Persian number 19. Thank you so much. So the last paragraph in the long healing prayer, you're saying there's a connection.
Next to the last paragraph.
Next to the last. There's
the
a
long one, yeah.
Yes, there's a connection.
John was talking about earlier, yeah.
Yes, so you're saying that there's a connection from your perspective to the Persian hidden words number 19, beautiful. And then also the Quran verse, which was, I believe, 172.
Surah 7,
Surah 7.
verse 172.
Surah 7, verse 172. Thank you. And that's just for the friends who may want to take notes. Is there anyone else? Thank you so much, Paul.
I
Truly
just want to
appreciate it.
comment.
Yes, please,
Thank you,
John.
Paul. Thank you, Paul, for bringing that up because it's a great reminder of two things. First of all, how interrelated things are from all dispensations and all of the writings. And the second thing is that by looking at one thing, you can go into many other different directions and finding things that are related to it and not related to it, but are suggested by it.
Jamie, please.
You know, as I read the long healing prayer, many times it seems that these attributes, these names that are mentioned, don't necessarily have a connection with each other. And then I think, but lately I've been thinking, you know, I think Baha'u'llah grouped those names for a reason. And so it's up to us to think and really think about how they are related, that he would put together those particular 3 or 4 attributes together in, you know, in the verse. And in some I can see the connection. In others it takes some deeper thinking. And I guess I say that there has to be a reason for why he put those different things together in each verse, and it wasn't just random. Like, you know, I used to think it was just random.
Thank you. You're reflecting my thinking process. And you're very right. To find the connection in some things takes some artistic mental gymnastics.
Thank you, Jamie. We also now have Seema. Seema, please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you, John, for this very thoughtful study for the tablet. Just wanted to say if this tablet was revealed to any one special person, and how it was revealed, when it was revealed.
I knew once, but it flew out of my head. I'm going to have to think about that.
Okay, or if somebody here knows who's actually been studying it, if you'd like to chime in. If not, Seema John, you're going to have to wait till next week and we will have your answer for you.
Yes.
Anyone else, please? Okay, great. Anyone else? Just use your hand or the raise your hand feature, please.
David wants to speak from Australia.
Oh, David, please, we want to hear from you.
Thank you, Nita. Hi, John. John, do you know who translated this prayer into English? Was it George Townsend or perhaps Shoghi Effendi?
Neither. It was actually in recent years, it was a committee of people who were scholars in both Persian and Arabic who, at the appointment of the Universal House of Justice, got together to translate this prayer. I'll have to tell you, when I went on my first pilgrimage, I was interested in what I'd heard that there was such a thing. And I asked Hand of the Cause, Mr. Fazey, about it. And he gave me a provisional translation, which in some instances is similar to this, in some instances very different. And I was just intrigued by the way different people can view the same thing. And so it's a recent thing just within the last several decades, since the House of Justice was formed.
I think the earliest translation that I knew of, a lot of us were familiar with, was done by Marcia Gale and her father, Ali.
Yes, that had been in circulation in the United States for quite a while.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me just see here. Here, let me just go to the other page here. Oh, we have one here. Let's see, Tina Sabet, or sorry, Safid Vash. I guess you go by both, so it's okay, please.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Hi, how are you? I just found out that it was written for Mirza Jafar Yazdi, the praying. I think the long healing prayer.
Excellent. Thank you for that. That's wonderful.
What's
Okay.
the reference on that?
Oh, what's the reference on that, Tina Jen?
I sent it to you, Nida.
Oh,
I
okay.
emailed it to you.
Oh,
So,
but could you read the reference right now for John really quickly?
sure. Well, it's from warble.com. So I'm not sure.
Excuse me.
It's a Baha'i website. It's on warble.com. I'm sure there'll be other references I can look up if you want.
Okay. No, I think that'll be fine. Yeah, I'm looking on here too. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be others, especially on Baha'i Library. Or Seema, if you want to just go ahead and plug in the name. And if you could just repeat that name, it's Mirza Jafar Yazdi.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it says here, it says Abdu'l-Baha related the following incident involving Mirza Jafar Yazdi, in which the long healing prayer was chanted for him. It's actually lovely. It's about 2 paragraphs. I'll ask everybody to raise their hands if they want me to read it, because it's rather lovely. Do you guys want me to read it? Okay, let me read it. It goes, and thank you so much, Tina. At the time when we were in the barracks, he fell dangerously ill and was confined to his bed. He suffered many complications until finally the doctor gave him up and would visit him no more. Then the sick man breathed his last. Mirza Agha Jan ran to Baha'u'llah with word of the death. Not only had the patient ceased to breathe, but his body was already going limp. His family were gathered about him, mourning him, shedding bitter tears. The Blessed Beauty said, quote, "Go, chant the prayer of Ya Shafi, O thou the healer, and Mirza Jafar will come alive. Very rapidly he will be as well as ever." I reached his bedside. His body was cold and all the signs of death were present. Slowly he began to stir. Soon he could move his limbs, and before an hour had passed, he lifted his head, sat up, and proceeded to laugh and tell jokes. He lived for a long time after that, occupied as ever with serving the friends. This giving service was a point of pride with him. To all he was a servant. He was always modest and humble, calling God to mind, and to the highest degree, full of hope and faith. Seema Jan, thank you so much for raising that question. People, ask your questions. We all learn from them. Thank you. Please, Kavita, raise your hand again. Thank you so much, Tina.
Okay.
Yeah, Kavita, please.
I know we mentioned it. Can you elaborate a little bit on the verses where it says "slayest the lovers"? I know it's a strong word, and how does that? It's hard to understand where you to slay the lover. I mean, you always love the lover, but slayest the lover. What does that mean?
I'll hide behind "he doeth whatsoever he willeth." But beyond that, all I can say is that Baha'u'llah has frequently talked about tests and difficulties as being a test between those who are true believers and those who just want something for themselves. And of course, slaying the lovers would be the ultimate test of well, just the ultimate test of belief. For instance, it would be akin to willing to give up your life, literally, for the faith, and putting it in the hands of Baha'u'llah, that whether you live or die, as to whether you can, which living or dying would be a greater service to him, not my decision to make, but his decision to make, and being very comfortable with either decision. And so to me, it's the ultimate test of faith in the manifestation.
Thank you.
John, I noticed in your book that you mentioned too that lovers being capitalized, it could be a reference to the include at least the manifestations of thou slayest the lovers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was actually in what I read, and that was something John wrote. Absolutely, yes. The capital L, definitely. Okay, anyone else?
Oh, by the way, back in translations, here somebody noted that Kim noted that Habib Taharzadeh, the brother of Habib Taharzadeh, was head of the committee that was involved with the translation, and he served the World Center for a number of years, mainly as a major authority on translations.
Okay, and I think, Jamie, did you have something? Yeah, I felt. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I did, because that was one of the passages that I really thought about. And for me, I think it answered the question of, many times we think, why do the good die young? Why does the good get taken? And, and all these terrible people seem to live on. And that kind of answered it for me, that, God does take the good, and he allows the wicked, the bad people to persist. And what it says to me is that it's for a reason. It's God is aware of everything. And so what we see as perhaps, not understandable, or it may seem unjust, there's a reason behind the taking of good people, or someone we feel is really good, and then leaving behind the folks who do so much evil. So kind of answers it for me.
That fits in with my general understanding of life on Earth, which is, I consider it as a workshop, a learning curve. It's also an obstacle course. We're given all sorts of things, good and evil, that we have to wend our way through with and learn from. And one of the interesting things is that life is a series of challenges and responses. We can't necessarily control the challenges, but we do have some control over how we respond to it, and that's what determines our spiritual growth. And it fits in with what you were saying.
I had a question.
Okay, please go ahead.
I still don't know when the tablet was revealed. I love the story she read, but I still don't know how it was revealed. I know it was revealed in the Aka period. I don't know what year, and I don't know exactly under what circumstances.
There's some research for you.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say the same thing, because look, we are all just a reminder of what Baha'u'llah said. We are all equal. No one knows more than the other. Of course, some of the research, like Mr. John Kolstoe, but I think what a great opportunity for you to research and come back and share it with all of us.
We got to save something for next week.
Yeah, exactly. Got to save something for next week. So Kim, thank you for prompting that. Okay, friends.
Give us the answer next week.
Yes, for next week. Okay, so I think we'll call that a wrap, and we'll see everyone next week. Please stay safe. Continue your prayers for John, even though he's going to be checking out of the hospital. He needs those prayers. Okay.
Yes, aloha.
Aloha, everyone.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Nida.
Sure.
Thank you, John.
Thank you all.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, John.
Aloha,
Thank
Pai.
you.
Nida.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Farewell.
Farewell.